Mother-in-law, please don't steal money from my wallet. My kleptomaniac Mill was shamelessly trying to take money out of my wallet. When I confronted her, she got mad. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. With that, my Mill kicked me out of the house. Little did she know, she was digging her own grave. My name is Alina, 27 years old. I met Mike through a friend's introduction, and today we joyously had our wedding. When I was young, I lost my dad, and my mother raised me up to this point on her own. I greatly respect and cherish her. However, on our first meeting, my soon-to-be Mill casually commented, "You look unlucky. That's why you lost your husband early." Both my mom and I were shocked that she'd so nonchalantly insult my late father. Both my father-in-law and Mike scolded her, but she got defensive, claiming she just spoke the truth. My mom was worried about my marriage, but since my father-in-law and Mike were supportive, she eventually approved. During the wedding, I was anxious about what my Mill might do. Thankfully, it went smoothly. Just when I was relaxing, there was a knock on the door of the dressing room. "Alina, it's your mom and Robert. Can we come in?" "Yes, please come in." It was my mom and her boyfriend Robert. Both shared their heartfelt congratulations and took a seat. That was a wonderful ceremony. "Congratulations, Alina. You looked absolutely stunning, Alina." Robert was so moved that he cried all the time. "Well, you know." Seeing Robert's tear-streaked face, both my mom and I burst into laughter. In that cheerful atmosphere, Mike knocked and entered. "Alina, great job today." "Mill, Robert, thank you for being here." "Good job, Mike. Where are your parents?" My mom got tired and wanted to leave early, so I let her. "I'm sorry." "It's fine. More importantly, keep your promise to me, okay?" "Of course." The agreement between my mom and Mike was that during our cohabitation, if my mother-in-law did something to me, Mike would always be there to support and defend me. Because of my Mill's insistence, I was slated to live with her after getting married. Initially, the plan was for Mike and I to live together, just the two of us, but my Mill threw a fit, insisting we couldn't get married unless we lived with her. Seeing my distress, my mom made this promise with Mike. Even my father-in-law was like, "If something's up, let me know." After trying it out, Mike told me that if living together truly became unbearable, we could consider living separately. "Alina, if my mother does something, tell me right away, okay? Even if it seems small, all right." "I understand, thanks, and I'm still working, so I'm not home that much. I think it'll be okay." "You're being naive, Alina. Well, this is something you'll only understand once you experience it. Take care of my daughter, Mike." "Yes, ma'am." I was quickly going to experience firsthand the truth in my mom's words. After returning from our honeymoon, living in Mike's family home, I immediately faced my Mill's true colors. "This food looks terrible. Redo it." Without even tasting the food I had just prepared, my Mill dumped it straight into the trash. Seeing this, both my father-in-law and Mike immediately scolded her. But she retorted, "I can't let you two eat such terrible-looking food. I threw it out for your sake. And yet, never mind." Then she stormed off to her room. Apologizing, Mike and his dad decided to take us out for dinner. Hearing this, my Mill threw a tantrum about not being invited, but Mike and his father just ignored her. My mother-in-law didn't like it, and she began to harass me even more. Mike's family runs a small workshop, and Mike is busy preparing to take over, studying hard, attending meetings with his father, and networking. I, on my side, have my job during the weekdays and am hardly home, but the weekends were a nightmare. Mill mostly stays home, does zero housework, and either lounges around watching TV or goes out. Mike tries to help out when he can, and after the food incident, my father-in-law told me, "I can manage on my own. Just prepare food for Mike." When my mother-in-law found out about it, she said, "As a daughter-in-law, it's only natural that you should prepare for the whole family." But my father-in-law dismissed it. Adding to the mix, my Mill is very old-fashioned in her thinking. "Alina, when are you going to quit your job? When are you having kids? A woman can do anything if she has amiability and charm, you know. Don't you know that? You don't have that, so you're working." Given her comments, it's clear that my Mill doesn't work and is a housewife. But, from what Mike has told me, she's almost incapable of doing household chores. Although she is technically an employee at my father-in-law's company, she's basically a ghost employee. She gets pocket money from my father-in-law in the name of salary, but if my mother-in-law likes something, she can't stand it and buys it immediately, so my father-in-law manages the money. Mike never lends her any money, so when she's short on cash, she comes to me asking for some. Elena, can you lend me some money? I'm sorry, but Mike told me never to lend you any money. I wondered, after all her mistreatment, why would she think I'd willingly lend her money? Even after refusing, she persisted. I'll make sure Mike and your dad don't find out, okay? I can't. Sorry. Please, Elena. I'm sorry. Mimel tried to put on her best smile and pleaded, but when I kept refusing, she lashed out with her typical temper tantrum. Why the attitude? You're really stingy that you won't lend me even though I'm asking you so much. I can't believe it. That's why I'm always being mean to you. Does she even realize she's the one being mean? Honestly, it's amazing that someone as kind-hearted as Mike could come from a mother with such a character. Just when I was trying to mentally escape from Mimel's drama, she stormed off somewhere, clearly irritated. When Mike came home and I reported how his mother had been pestering me for money, both he and my father-in-law scolded her. But far from showing remorse, Mimel shot me a glare, saying, "You tattled." My sneaky Mill, seemingly desperate for money, tried to rummage through my purse and take cash from my wallet while I was out of the room. Just then, we locked eyes as I walked back in. Mill, don't you dare take money from my wallet. I can't believe this. I warned her, but she just snapped back at me. Who do you think you are? You're just a daughter-in-law. You're basically stealing from someone else's wallet. How dare you speak up to me? Unbelievable. If you're going to be like this, just leave this house. I had reached my breaking point with my utterly selfish Mill. Honestly, being cut off from such an unreasonable Mill would be a blessing. I told her, fine, and started packing my things. All the while, she watched me with a smug grin, seemingly pleased. Thanks for everything. It had only been a short 3-month stay with my in-laws, but I vowed never to live with my Mill again, and headed home. I was so furious I completely forgot to inform Mike, but when he got home, he filled me in on his exchange with his mother. Where's Elena? Yay, where did Elena go? When Mike and his father got home from work and noticed my absence, they questioned my Mill. With a triumphant attitude, she said, "Oh, I just kicked that useless daughter-in-law out." While she laughed heartily, both Mike and father-in-law looked pale and concerned. Realizing they weren't amused, but still oblivious, she went on, "This is what I've been saying. I told you not to marry a woman from a single-parent family. All she does is disobey and defy me. All she needed to do was to nod and agree with whatever I say. What have you done?" Father-in-law shouted, more agitated than I had ever seen him. My Mill looked taken aback, clearly not expecting this reaction. Father-in-law collapsed to his knees, looking like he'd seen a ghost, muttering, "It's over. My life is over." What's the matter? Mill seemed bewildered, unable to keep up with the turn of events. You've done something unthinkable. Why are you so angry? Elena is the stepdaughter of the CEO of the company we do business with. What? It seemed to finally dawn on my Mill what she had done. Her face momentarily turned white, but she quickly recovered, insisting she did nothing wrong. Mike, call Elena right now. I did. She's at Robert's place now. This is bad. Let's go right away. I received a call on my cell from Mike saying his father-in-law was forcibly putting his Mill into the car and heading our way. It must have been inside the car. I could hear the Mill's frantic shouts and the father-in-law's yelling. Robert, you came to the wedding with my mother, is her new husband. Even though he's technically my stepfather, it turns out Robert is actually the boss of my father-in-law's business client. My mother had always said she wouldn't remarry until after I got married, so she hadn't met our families until the wedding, and wasn't seated in the family section at the ceremony. So, the Mill doesn't know about this. My father-in-law only recently found out that Robert was my mother's new husband. Robert married my mother after I got married, but I've known Robert for nearly 20 years. After my father passed away, my mother raised me on her own. No matter how tough things got, she never complained and was always smiling, brightening up everyone around her. Robert, smitten by her, proposed to her, but she apparently told him she wouldn't marry anyone until after I was married. I don't want to burden Alina anymore. Getting a new dad, changing her last name, moving, I can't make her go through all of that just because of adult circumstances. I'm so sorry. I'll wait. I'll wait until Alina grows up, becomes independent, and someday gets married and is happy. Then it'll be my turn to make you happy. Robert, can I stay and watch over Alina with you until then? By then, won't we be pretty old? It doesn't matter. If we're talking age, I'll be even older. Robert laughed heartily. My mother, tears in her eyes, just thanked him. Robert respected my mother's wishes, always saying he'd wait. They never officially got married until I did, but I knew they were deeply in love. Even as a child, after losing my father, I sometimes felt like if my mother married Robert, she'd be taken away from me. There were times I wasn't kind to Robert, but Robert always treated me lovingly, often taking us out or going on trips. He even tried to pay for my college tuition. My mother declined, saying it was a matter of principle. But that's the kind of relationship we had with Robert. Of course, my childhood home is now Robert's, so as the mill said, we went back to Robert's place. When we told Robert everything that had happened at the in-laws' place, and about the mill, he was livid. Considering the relationship with my father-in-law's company, he was boiling with anger when the doorbell rang. When my mother checked the monitor, there were images of my father-in-law, mother-in-law, and Mike. She asked Robert if they could be let inside. Robert replied, "Let them in," and unlocked the door to welcome them. Immediately upon seeing us in the tense atmosphere, both my father-in-law and Mike got down on their knees. "I'm deeply sorry. My wife was very rude to Alina. Mom seemed to have chased Alina out. I'm sorry. If Alina is uncomfortable, we can stop living together." While my father-in-law and Mike were apologizing, the person in question, my mill, stood defiantly with her arms crossed. "Oh, what are you talking about? Alina is the one to blame, right? I'm not at all wrong. Besides, if Alina is gone, who's going to do the housework?" I was dumbfounded and couldn't close my open mouth looking at the indifferent mill. I knew she lacked common sense, but I never thought she would go this far. It was my father-in-law who broke the silence. "I knew you were sheltered and naive, but I never imagined you'd go this far." He sighed in resignation and told Mimel that they should divorce. "We'll start the divorce proceedings as soon as tomorrow. I'm utterly disappointed in you." "What are you talking about? Why should I be the one to get a divorce? If anyone should, it should be Alina and Mike since she left on her own." The moment she was confronted with the idea of divorce by her husband, her earlier arrogance vanished. Mike joined in the confrontation. "Why should I divorce Alina? I love her. I have no intention of divorcing her. We only agreed to live together because you begged us, crying. And yet you treat Alina like a maid. Stop talking nonsense." My father-in-law nodded in agreement and said in a mix of exasperation and anger, "Your father asked me to take care of you, so I became your husband and took care of you. But no matter how many times I warn you, you never listen, and you never show any remorse. At this age, you're beyond my control." The mother-in-law clings to the father-in-law who looks far away, perhaps remembering the hardships he had until now. "What about the company? It belonged to my father. Your father passed the company to me when he passed away. Even if I retire, Mike is here. You've only been a name at the company and haven't done any real work. Do you think you can suddenly handle it? I won't let the employees end up on the streets because of you." My mill seems to be looking for a way out as she's being blamed by her husband and Mike. By the way, my mill is a true blue daddy's girl. Raised in luxury, she's never really worked a day in her life, always living as a pampered princess. Without her husband's support, she wouldn't be able to handle household chores, let alone a job. My mill tried to cling to my father-in-law, but his decision seemed final. "Alina, say something." Out of desperation, she turned to me for support. "I also think divorce is the right decision. Someone who tries to steal money from another's wallet and then retaliates when called out on it. Who knows what she might do next? What are you talking about? To the two who might not know the real reason I left, I explained, the cause was Mill trying to steal money. Their faces drained of color. I can't believe this. It's unbelievable. Oh, stop exaggerating. I was just borrowing a bit. Both my mother and Robert retorted to the unapologetic Mill. In general, that's called theft, which is a serious crime. I had thought you were an unreasonable person, but I object to returning my daughter to a place where someone like you resides. I object too. Elena may not be blood-related, but she's my precious daughter. How can I return such a dear daughter to someone who treats her so poorly? There's nothing I can say in response to that. We are truly sorry. Ever since we started this conversation, both your father-in-law and Mike have been repeatedly apologizing, but you haven't said sorry once. You're the cause of this, aren't you? Why can you act like this? Both of them kept apologizing, but the Mill showed no sign of remorse. Well, that's because... Look, I've seen a few people like you in my time, so I can pretty much guess. I'd recommend a divorce if I were you. Don't make decisions for me. The one being unreasonable is you. Enough is enough. I'm telling you, I'll go to court if I have to, but I'm divorcing you. That's final. No, please. The father-in-law really did have the divorce papers ready, with his part filled out. He was ready to take it to court if the Mill refused. Finally getting the gravity of the situation, the Mill relented and signed the divorce papers. Handing over half the assets to the Mill, the father-in-law looked strangely relieved. Mike kept his promise to my mom and cut ties with the Mill. The father-in-law also washed his hands off her. Even after the divorce, the Mill couldn't control her shopping habits and quickly burned through her share of the assets. The Mill tried several times to reach out to the two of them, but they've completely blocked her out. I happened to spot someone who looked like the Mill the other day. She had aged significantly, her once proud and arrogant demeanor gone, looking so frail as if she might collapse if touched. Her whole aura had changed. Because of her attitude, she's always been kept at arm's length. Now, after this whole debacle, negative rumors about her spread like wildfire. There seems to be no one left willing to help her. It's said that she's finally feeling remorse for her actions. As they say, don't stand before you regret it. Some days later, the father-in-law and Mike visited Robert with a box of chocolates to apologize. When I explained to Robert and my mother that my mother-in-law had disappeared, they warned them to not let it happen again. After that, I returned to Mike's family home. Since the Mill left, my stress levels have dropped significantly. Not only me, but both the father-in-law and Mike seem to be smiling a lot more. Soon after, I found out I was pregnant, and the whole family was overjoyed. We're all eagerly waiting for our new family member to arrive.